Hey guys, what's up? It's Katie and I'm back with another Marvel Contest of Champions video. And today we are going to be looking at the champion spotlight for Apocalypse. So thanks to the CCP, I had early access to the champion spotlight for Apocalypse. So thanks kabam. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of his mechanics, his base stats and abilities, and see if he is really apocalyptic and not apocta-dudlick. Wait, what? All right, so let's take a look at Apocalypse. So thousands of years ago in ancient Aqaba, the first living being on Earth to express the mutant X gene was born, given the name Ensaba-Nur, or the first one. As he traveled the Earth, Ensaba-Nur deemed himself Apocalypse, convincing ancient civilizations that he was a deity and manipulating them into fighting wars, which he justified as stimulating growth, judgment, and destruction. After conquesting the Earth for many millennia, Apocalypse used celestial technology to enter a period of suspended animation for many centuries, awakening in the current age and deciding the Earth is ready for further examination. So I am glad that they went with the comic book version of Apocalypse. We didn't get the Mcoc version, and I'm super happy we didn't get that terrible X-Men Apocalypse version. Like, dude. Kabam, thank you so much for picking the comic version. All right, so let's take a look at his mechanics. Now, Apocalypse is all about ramping up to empower himself or his fellow mutants, and he does this by simply winning fights, which will grant him genetic code. Apocalypse can choose to keep his genetic code for himself to boost his own abilities, or spend them in pre-fight screen to empower any mutant teammate. In combat, Apocalypse is all about big special attacks. SP1s and SP2s will trigger a debuff based on the last attack landed, and these debuffs can be converted into enhanced versions of the Special 3. Wait, what? Finally, if Apocalypse's signature ability is unlocked whenever he doesn't participate in a fight, he enters a deep slumber, allowing him to regenerate health based on how many fights his team wins while he slumbers. So that's pretty cool. We haven't seen that yet in the game. So that's a pretty cool way of doing regen, having him regen, quote unquote, while he sleeps. So basically while he's not being used. I actually really like that. That can be really beneficial. So let's go ahead and take a look at his base stats. And this guy is tanky. Look at that health. Dude is a tank. So he's gonna take well, a big pounding, you could say. He's got decent PI and he's got alright attack. So let's go ahead and take a look at his strengths and see what he is good at. Now, obviously he is a mutant since he is technically the first mutant. He's got bleed, he inflicts a weakness, he's got poison, concussion, and yes, we've got another champion that inflicts degen, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's take a look at his strengths. So he's able to prevent purify abilities. So Apocalypse reduces the opponent's purify ability accuracy by 100%. So in most matchups against difficult purify champions or nodes, such as Kingpin, Korg, or Mole Man, the opponent will not be able to purify debuffs. So that's kind of interesting. Now, Mole Man, he really can't really purify debuffs all that great against mutants anyways, and a lot of these champs are mutants that they have listed here, but or excuse me, are skill champs, which mutant does have the class advantage over. So this is kind of cool. I do like this a lot. Champs that can purify debuffs can sometimes be a pain in the butt. I'm looking at you like Agent Venom with your tenacity, but that's a different ballgame. But Killmonger is another one, especially if you're fighting them in arena when he is paired up with a Void synergy. And then fighting mutant opponents. When fighting mutants, Apocalypse's special attacks will be more impactful and allow him to ramp up his genetic code much faster. So he's going to be great against mutant champs, it seems like. And then he can also prevent evade. So as the opponent evades, Apocalypse increases his chance to bypass evade by 10% for the rest of the quest. This makes him a great option when fighting evade champs. So it's always good to have another type of evade counter, and then significantly enhance any mutant. Using his ability, Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Apocalypse can boost your favorite mutant to some pretty crazy levels. However, it does require some ramp up time. So it seems like he's going to be a bit of a ramp up champ. So now that we know his strengths, let's take a look at his weaknesses. So he suffers against robots because Apocalypse needs genetic code to power himself, and well, robots, they have no genetic code, right? Because they're robots. Stun immune and block penetration. Apocalypse needs to land a decent amount of heavy attacks while he balances his debuffs before locking them in with a special 3. Stun immune matchups will significantly reduce this effectiveness, and opponents who deal damage through blocks will chip him out fast. So Going against champs who can do a lot of block penetration like Corvus, probably not a solid option. Sun immune champs, so Nick Fury when his LMD is destroyed, Emma Frost in her diamond form, those are going to be kind of hard to come by. And then also champs who are poison, degen, or debuff immune, because Apocalypse needs to place a lot of debuffs to be effective. So I don't really know of any champ that's actually degen immune, so I don't know why that's in there. Maybe we're going to actually get a champ who's degen immune? What? Theory. And then ramp time. Unless Apocalypse fights a mutant, it can take quite a few fights before he builds up his genetic code, and this can make it the first fight or two more difficult. So it seems like he's definitely going to be a ramp up champ for sure. So now let's take a look at some of his abilities. So we talked about that genetic enhancement. So at the start of each quest with 1 persistent genetic code, this becomes 2 if defending and 3 if defending as a final boss. And then knocking out a hashtag non-robot opponent grants 1 genetic code, gains 2 at the start of the fight when fighting a mutant. At the start of fight, gain 1 indefinite passive prowess for each genetic code, each increasing special attack damage by 40%. At 3+ genetic code, become stun immune while striking. At 4+ genetic mode, striking the opponent's block with light attacks inflicts a stun debuff for 0.8 seconds, cooldown 12 seconds, and this has no effect against well-timed blocks. So when we fight this guy in the event quest, you're definitely not going to want to die to him. That's for sure, because he can probably wreck you, and you're not going to want to bring in a mutant champion against him in this month's event quest. You're going to want to bring in a robot. So Sentinel, Warlock, the Visions, potentially even Ultron. Those are going to be your best bets. So with this genetic code, Apocalypse basically has the ability to hold infinite passive prowess, making him great in some situations. Basically, like if you think about the special connoisseur node in X6, he's going to be good for that. And then this ability to stun into blocks, that's crazy. And that's pretty good, especially if you've got, you know, a passive AI, right? How many times have we seen a passive AI? So this is kind of a neat little way to get around that passive AI. Hopefully we won't be seeing the passive AI too much anymore, but this is pretty cool. And then he's also got total molecular control. Develop immunity to bleed, incinerate, and disorient effects over 8 seconds while suffering from them. And once developed, these immunities persist for the entire quest. Each time the opponent evades, gain plus 10% chance to bypass evade, and that's not affected by ability accuracy reduction or the chance to bypass evade persists through the quest. And then opponents suffer 100% purify ability accuracy reduction. So this ability purify ability accuracy reduction means that unless the opponent facing Apocalypse has some way to increase their chance to trigger purify, they will never be able to remove his debuffs with purify. And that includes the stun from parry. So that's pretty cool. I like this feature. I don't know how this is going to make him in the quest, but it's definitely interesting. Now, he is reliant on his heavy attacks. So his heavy attack, he has both hits inflict bleed, dealing direct damage over 7 seconds. So that's a decently long bleed. And then refreshes personal weakness, poison, concussion, and degen effects on the opponent. So you're definitely going to want to be able to keep those debuffs on. So landing your heavy is important. So he's a very heavy reliant champion. It's another one of those champions here that we have. Now let's talk about his special attacks. If the opponent is suffering from a damage over time effect, special attack debuffs trigger on activation and last 30% longer, and each hit deals a burst of physical damage for each personal weakness, poison, concussion, or degen on the opponent. So you're going to want to have those debuffs on in order to maximize the damage. So Apocalypse can actually chain his heavy into a special attack to inflict bleed, and thus you're getting an extra little boost there for the special attack debuffs. And fighting Apocalypse with the Suicide Masteries turned on is not best, because you're going to, since he'll trigger his special attack debuffs without needing to land a hit. So he's not going to be suicide friendly, it seems like. Now let's talk about his special attack 1. It inflicts a debuff determined by the last light or medium attack thrown, and if fighting a mutant or if Apocalypse has 4 genetic codes, it's going to trigger both. So if you end with a light attack, it's going to inflict a weakness, and if you end with a medium attack before you launch the special, it's going to inflict a poison. Okay, so now let's take a look at his special 2. And so again, it's going to inflict a debuff based on whether you end your combo before going into the special on a light or medium. So if you end in a light, it's going to inflict a concussion, and if you end in a medium, it's going to inflict the degen, and that's going to deal a good bit of direct damage over 25 seconds. So that's a long degen. So combo enders, it seems, are key into what effect you want to have or what ability you want to have for Apocalypse. Do you want to put a DOT or do you want to have some utility? So basically you want to throw light attack for utility for this special and medium for damage over time. So let's take a look at his special 3. All personal weakness, poison, concussion, and degen effects on the opponent are triggered at plus 100% potency and paused indefinitely. This potency increases but does not stack multiple times, and if no weakness, poison, concussion, or degen effects are active, inflict 2 at random, and these will not gain additional potency and will not be paused. So basically, this is the way you want to lock the opponent into the expiring debuffs from the special 1 and the special 2. So it seems like the loop that you want to do is special 1, special 2, and then use the heavy attacks to keep refreshing them until you can get to the special 3. That's how you're going to get the most out of Apocalypse. So now let's talk about this pre-fight and cross-fight ability that he has called Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Once per quest, if Apocalypse has 4 genetic code, he can spend them in the pre-fight screen to place a cross-fight on the next fight. The next mutant teammate, excluding Apocalypse, to enter this fight becomes a Horseman of the Apocalypse for the rest of the quest. So what does that mean? So for Horsemen, they gain 100% bleed resistance. Great if you run suicides or you're on a Caltrops node. An indefinite prowess, increasing special attack damage by 50%. That's huge. Plus 30% offensive ability accuracy. Go unblockable for 2 seconds when the opponent purifies a debuff, and once per fight, go unstoppable for 3 seconds when struck. So this is pretty cool. This makes him kind of a really neat synergy champ, right? So if you haven't watched the video on Professor X, he's a pretty good synergy champ as well. So it seems like these two are decent synergy champs. So this is going to give those, it's going to turn a mutant into a Horseman of the Apocalypse and give them some awesome abilities. So now let's talk about the signature ability, Survival of the Fittest. When Apocalypse doesn't participate in a fight, he enters his rejuvenation chamber to slumber. At the start of his next fight, he regenerates health for each fight his teammate won while he slumbered, and this can stack up to 2 times. So this is I don't really necessarily like the name. I don't agree with the name, kabam. That's not how Darwin works, but whatever. But this is cool because if you win a fight with another teammate and Apocalypse isn't participating, he's regenning health. So this is great. So you basically can get the power of the Horseman of the Apocalypse, and then Apocalypse can regen, and so he can basically regen back any health he could have lost. So this is a pretty cool way to add regen into Apocalypse, and it's a new and unique way, and I'm all for it. Please do this when you introduce Dracula, if you ever introduce Dracula. Okay, now let's talk about his synergies. So he's got one with himself called the First One, and he gains 15% attack for each mutant on the team, excluding himself. And that's kind of good because the thing with Apocalypse's synergies is they're heavily reliant upon mutants. So he's got one with Your Fate Is Mine with Kang, Mr. Sinister, and Cable. So Apocalypse starts the first fight in a quest with maximum genetic code. So that's huge. So you would definitely want to bring either of these champs. Kang, every 4 seconds, he gains an indefinite fury buff, granting an increase in attack rating, and this ends when reaching 20 stacks of fury. The problem here is that it's Kang. Not many people have a 5 or 6 star Kang since he was a gifting champ. Mr. Sinister, degen debuffs gain plus 50% potency. That's nice. And Cable, incinerate debuffs gain plus 150% potency, and heavy attacks now inflict degen on each hit and their stack limit is removed. So that's big for Cable. That actually makes Cable and Mr. Sinister not bad champs to have on your team. Then he has Bringer of Death 1 with Psylocke, so basic attacks have a 30% chance to grant a Psy charge. And if Psylocke is a Horseman of Apocalypse, she also gains 50% crit damage rating and 30% attack rating when striking an opponent at 0 power. So that's a nice little boost for Psylocke. Bringer of Death 2 with Gambit. Each time a kinetic charge is gained, there is a 70% chance to gain an additional one with a cooldown of 0.8 seconds. And if he's a Horseman of Apocalypse, each kinetic charge grants 10% perfect block chance up to a max of 100. So that's not bad for Gambit either, because you want to convert those, right? And whoops, you want to convert those into the prowess buff with the heavy, and then launch your special 2 for big damage with Gambit. And then we have Bringer of Death 3 with Wolverine. So OG Wolvie personal bleeds have a chance based on crit rating to be critical bleeds, dealing damage based on critical damage rating. And if he is a Horseman of Apocalypse, gain 30% critical rating plus 40% crit damage rating. So that's actually not bad for Wolvie. That's not too bad. That's a good synergy too. Bringer of Death 4 with Archangel. Each hit of a heavy attack into a stunned opponent has a 10% chance to pause all neurotoxins for 3 seconds. And if he is a Horseman, the stun duration is increased by 30%. So that's big too. That's actually really big. And then we've got Impending Storm with OG Storm. Each hit of a heavy attack into a shocked opponent has a 60% chance to inflict an additional shock debuff, dealing 90% of modified attack over 8 seconds. If she is a Horseman of Apocalypse, shock's effect lasts plus 50% longer, and heavy attacks refresh all shock damage on the opponent. Or excuse me, all shock debuff. That's pretty big for Storm as well. That boosts her up pretty good. And then Guardian of the Pyramid with Storm Pyramid X. And so Storm Pyramid X, after charging her dormant prowess, Storm has a 70% chance to trigger a passive prowess for each prowess buff that is already active, each increasing special damage by 20% for 6 seconds. And if she is a Horseman, gain plus 30% crit rating and plus 20% prowess potency. So that makes my girl pretty potent. And I love Storm Pyramid X. So those prowess, that's really where her damage is at with that special 2 and special 3. So that's awesome. That really boosts her a lot. But anyways, guys, that is it for Apocalypse. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Apocalypse? Do you think he is more of a synergy boosting champion, or do you think he's going to be fine on his own? How do you think he's going to be in the monthly event quest? Do you think he is apocalyptic or apoca-dudlick? Let me know in the comments below and let's discuss. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you guys liked what you saw and you want to see more, please remember to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Hit me up in the Discord chat. Thanks, guys. Bye.